Hi, it's Jason from Fraser Valley Rose Farm, and as a home-based plant grower, I definitely have to make do with some pretty basic growing conditions. Sort of jury-rigged down here a basement room with some natural light, some supplemental light, some fans, some heaters, just trying to keep this space good for starting my assortment of seeds for the spring. And not that I'm complaining, I get a lot of assortment out of this just to supplement what I'm growing outdoors, but it doesn't stop me from daydreaming about what larger growers or medium-sized growers can do with better growing facilities. By this point in the year, they already have their own seedlings, of course cuttings from foreign sources, as well as tissue culture on the benches. I got a chance this week to go down and visit Exemplar. You'll know Julia from a video we did in the fall where she taught us how to divide grasses. Same grower, same growing facilities, just a different time of year as they get geared up for spring. Let's have a look. She's been kind enough to give us a behind the scenes view of how they're starting their plants in the spring. Well, thanks for having us back.
Thank you for coming.
So I hear you're deep into propagation season now, so I thought I'd stop by and see what you're growing.
Yeah, so now we're getting all of our early spring cuttings started. So it's been super busy over here getting everything stuck and rooted for summer.
When would you have started doing some of your rooting?
We start week 1, so right at the beginning of January. That's when we get started on our first set of cuttings, and basically we will keep going till the end of August.
So week 1, that's sort of, as you say, January, middle of winter. Sounds like that would be a challenging time to start cuttings. Why so early? Why do you need to have plants on the ground this early into the year?
We start early because, like, let's say the coreopsis here, it takes about 6 weeks to root in a plug this size, and then we up pot it into a 32 or a 50, which then also takes a couple more weeks, and then we send it to get potted up into a larger size. So by the time you want it ready, you have to start fairly early.
Right, so getting plants into the garden center, say in April or May, if they want to have fully grown plants, you've got to start it in the middle of winter. And you're doing that in an environment like this, where you have, I can see you have mist on this bench here, but you also, I'm going to pan up for just a second here, you also have supplemental lighting. So right now we're in the middle of February, probably your day length is somewhere around 11 hours. Mm-hmm. So that's fine, but it must be challenging when you have shorter days to get these things to grow. So adding supplemental light makes some sense.
It definitely helps for the rooting. Some plants like the echinaceas and the hacanacloas here, they need longer days. So to add the grow lights, it really benefits the plants and you will get a nicer outcome.
Perfect. And I see you do have mist on here, and the plants are a little bit wet on top. I can assume that this is intermittent mist, like it's running a few seconds every 10 minutes or something like that.
Yeah, it'll go off every 10 seconds, for 10 seconds every 10 minutes until they start to pull back. So once they get a little give, then they'll come right off the mist.
Okay, so now the cuttings that you have here, they were not taken from plants, mother plants in your care. Most likely these were brought in from suppliers in Central America, yeah?
Yeah, so these ones they're second cuttings. So we got mint cuttings in from Central America, and then we took top cuttings once they rooted. So these would be ours.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Okay, so you had enough time from your January start to grow them out enough to take cuttings off them for more propagation.
Yeah, it's awesome, right? And it's something you can easily do at home with like mint, and I think it's mint and basil. You can take your own little top cuts and just stick it right into water and put it on your windowsill and you'll get another plant.
So now looking at what you have here, a lot of these are herbs. You guys do a bunch of perennials. Certainly, as we've noted before, you do a lot of grasses as well. So you try to have the full selection for the garden centers, eh?
Yeah, we try to give a really good mix, not just, one variety of echinacea, try to get a bunch that way, everybody's happy, and maybe you can try something new that you haven't seen before. They were the first tissue culture I ever did. So they're, it was some trial and error learning on them, but.
So these echinaceas, the varieties that you have here, like for instance, this one is Echinacea bubblicious. And I guess the reason why they're getting them from tissue culture is because they want them to be identical to the plants they're taking tissue from, instead of grown from seed, which can be very variable. These would be the special varieties that that have to be the same as the parent.
Yeah, now you get really even plants when you do tissue culture. Like in theory, they all will be the same, right? So you get a better outcome of your crop.
So now looking here, I see you have these ones tented, which is more familiar to the way that a lot of people do on small scale propagation, not under mist, but under a humidity dome or a tent like this. So what's different about these plants?
So these will be our tissue culture that actually arrives today. So we will stick it under the tents, and it will have mist on it, but very lightly, just to help increase humidity under the tents. And the grow lights will actually burn the new tissue culture, so we keep them kind of hidden. That way you don't get that ring around your plants.
So nutrition-wise, what are you doing for that? Once they've rooted, I can assume that you're doing liquid feed fertilizer?
Yeah, so we would liquid feed every 2 weeks. And then once they actually get stuck, I do a tank mix, which is like rooting hormone and a little bit of fungicide and a fertilizer. That way they can get a good head start.
Well, I always like getting a peek at the young plants that I'm not familiar with and new varieties and so on. This is a Phlox Gina, which I haven't actually seen before in the stores.
It's pretty, right?
In terms of temperature in here, do you know what temperature you actually maintain it at here?
It's around 18 degrees for when we have like unrooted cuttings and seeds. When we fill this up with tissue culture, it's generally around 20 degrees.
Okay.
So we like to keep it around 18 to 20.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, you know, for optimum rooting temperatures, that would be on the bottom end of it. But because you're also doing, I think you're doing under bench heating, aren't you?
Yeah, so the benches would be set to 22 to 24. So they're quite a bit hotter than the air temperature.
So the ambient temperature is a bit lower, but the bench temperature is higher, which is like perfect for rooting. So you're putting the heat in here from a boiler, as I recall, it's in the next room there, and then the boiler runs through these sort of manifolds underneath the benches and just basically pushes the heat as hot water underneath the bench. That's pretty awesome.
Right, and it reuses the water, so it like recycles at the same time.
Right, and now we've looked at a bunch of plants that you started from tissue culture and some that you started from cuttings. Basically, the third way to start it would be from seedlings, and I can see here that you have some violas that you're starting out from seed here, and wow, what a nice uniform germination. That is awesome. And is that happening right up on the bench?
Yes.
Yeah, I would almost expect that kind of uniform germination to happen in a germination chamber or something like that. That's awesome, you know. So fresh seed and good conditions, I guess.
Right, and you can tell some varieties do quite a bit better than others, but
right. I mean, even just between a couple of different varieties here, you have this tray, which is very uniform, and then you have this one here, which is a little patchy yet, although it may come on. So that's good to see.
So these were the first mints that we stuck, and as you can see here, we took the top cut. So then basically from one plant you get two.
So now I notice in your plug trays here what you're using. Can you pull one of those up for me? It looks like the sort of plug that you're using is sort of pre-formed with a binder. It looks like they're not even touching the walls. It's not a loose fill tray, so that must be something that you buy in special just so that the making of these trays is super easy, eh?
So for stuff like unrooted cuttings, we buy trays in. We use a couple different varieties, but they've got basically, I don't know if you can see there, it's like a pre-dibble. So all you have to do is just stick your little cutting right in that hole and you're good to go.
Right.
Whereas something like tissue culture, we do fills ourselves.
Yeah.
That way you can really bury the root. So it's all dependent on which variety.
Right, but I can see the advantage of using something like this that's pre-formed and it has a binder in it or a net in it for a couple of things. One, you say it's pre-dibbled. Two, that you don't have to actually do the work of loose filling it. And three, when you put it through a transplanter, it's going to hold together so much easier.
So much nicer, yeah. And you know, all the soil is uniformed, which is a big thing. You want uniformity on your plugs. So, you know, the pre-dibble definitely and the pre-filled have a much.
Right, and if you were filling these, let's say you were filling them by hand, it's hard to fill a tray perfectly to the same density or uniformity across the whole thing.
Yeah, everybody fills a little bit differently, so that's when you get, you know, the kind of uneven.
Right, on this one though, you have perfectly even propagation or take all the way through the tray, so that's good to see.
These are my favorite, is the tissue culture Bruneras. They are beautiful.
Yeah, look at the leaves on those. Now, you know, just being observant as I go along here, I notice that you've got something that looks like bran flakes sort of all over the top of this thing. How did that get on there?
So in the prop house, we try to lean more towards biologicals for pest control. So I would sprinkle on, like, I think this was the lacewing larvae, and that will control my pests so I don't have to use harsh chemicals on the products.
Okay, so that's delivery for beneficial insects.
Yeah.
That's the tour, and thanks so much for joining me today for this video. Special thank you to Julia and the whole crew out at Exemplar who were kind enough to have me out. I hope they'll have me back later in the season to look at some of those tissue culture varieties as they finish out and start showing their colors. Everybody knows the coolest stuff comes from tissue culture. All right, thanks so much for watching. If you have any questions, please drop them down below the video. I'll see what I can do to help.